Rover needed new backing and new blood. In 1994, it got them when it passed out of British hands and into BMWs. The Germans hadn't received such a warm welcome from the British since the days of Prince Albert. BMW had effectively replaced Rover as the supplier of executive cars for the middle classes. Surely, if anyone could give Rover a new lease of life, it was them. Expectations were high as the company spent a further 4 years developing its new flagship model. The Rover 75 was launched amidst unprecedented fanfare and optimism. It looked like the boys from Bavaria had done the trick. The 75 continued the attempt to hark back to the good old days of the post-war period, complete with chrome, a grille and wood trim.
The cabin in this range-topping connoisseur trim is straight from ye oldie worldy school of interior design. It's been given lashings of wood and a damn good hiding. I know as well as you do that that's not such a big deal these days. You can get wooden leather on a Daewoo, for Pete's sake. But there's a difference. Other manufacturers slap a bit of it around to affect poshness, but with this Rover you get the feeling that they started with the materials and then designed the cabin to suit. Still seems to be something missing though. Ah yes.
For somebody who wanted to have a car that was reliable, that stated that he was getting somewhere, maybe not quite to the top, but getting there, I think the Rover 75 in particular would meet all those requirements.
But worryingly, the car's biggest admirers weren't exactly thrusting young executives.
I bought it before it came out, sort of thing, before it was ready, before it was launched. And I thought I read all about it and I saw it on a motor show. And I thought it was, if half what they say was true, then it was a good car.
It now seemed our patriotic duty to buy this German-owned car. The problem was that in looking to the past to recapture its glory, Rover seemed to have got stuck there.
The critical mistake was that the world had done so many revolutions that they just didn't understand about Beyoncé, about Destiny's Child, about Eminem, and about bling bling. You could never call the Rover 75 bling bling, and that's the problem. If they'd kept pace as BMW, as Mercedes, then it would have been fine, but it just stood there in its triple welted brogues and its yellow corduroy trousers and its sports jacket with its elbows with patches on, and said, doffing its hat and straightening its cravat, I'm British, I'm going to stay like this, and I'm going to sell. Hopeless, absolutely.
The Rover 75 seems to confirm something that I've long feared, that Britain is being turned into a fatuous theme park, obsessed with heritage and cowering behind a barricade of stupid nostalgic knickknacks. This is Rover! Rover! The company that gave us great cars like the P6, the SD1 and that experimental turbine car. I want something modern, not a great day out in history. This ridiculous hankering for the past is just not British. I can't stand it!
Sales of Rover cars slunk by a quarter last year, and next week the company, which is owned by BMW, is expected to announce losses of more than £600 million. The whole industry has been going through difficult times, but it's been worse for Rover than any other manufacturer.
BMW decided the game was up and sold Rover to some British investors for the derisory sum of £10. With no money to develop new models, the new regime fell back on that other Rover trick of rebadging foreign cars. But even the most seasoned Rover skeptics had a shock in store.
There we are. It's called the City Rover, and it's got 5 doors, very small car. It will cost between £6,500 and £8,500. That doesn't look, A, very nice, or B, anything like a Rover, and there's a very good reason for that. It's because it's actually made by a company called Tata in India, and then it's shipped over here where we nail some Rover badges to it. Why can't we do it?
The City Rover that was it. When I saw that, I thought, that's it. This thing really is the worst thing they could have done. And you knew how bad things were when they're going to a third world manufacturer to produce a car that they thought they could flog to people in Britain. And they hoped just by changing the rear light clusters a little bit and sticking a Rover grille on the front that people wouldn't notice. But basically, it was just a very old and very bad design. I mean, it probably really, cut the scampi in downtown Delhi, but it just don't work in Chelsea.
Rover's Indian takeaway confirmed what many had suspected after the 75 failed to revive the company's fortunes. Rover was no longer about cars. It was about damage limitation in a region heavily dependent on the motor industry.
You have to say that there was enormous skill, and they did try very hard to breathe new life into these ossified old platforms of cars that really were massively underdeveloped. And for 5 years, they did a half-decent job. And they kept, let's not forget this, they kept the West Midlands in employment, 30,000 people, for 5 long years. And that is an achievement which should not be taken away from them.
Thousands of workers at MG Rover have been told to go home until further notice, with union leaders claiming the chances of a rescue deal are now 1,000,000 to 1. At a mass meeting this morning, they were told Rover is losing at least £20 million a month, and a government loan would only keep them on the payroll for a week.
Perhaps it's not surprising that the cars have been forgotten in the general lamentation this year at the demise of Rover. Thousands of job losses is a tragedy that makes the death of a brand pale into insignificance. Yet, like many tragedies, this one had an air of inevitability to it.
The truth is that, for the past 30 years, Rover has just been acting out an embarrassing, long death agony. It's been a sort of, a feeble parody of vitality, kept alive only by misguided sentiment and half-hearted investment.
All these people that are mourning the loss of Rover have probably bought a Toyota or a Nissan or a Honda or an Audi, so they only have themselves to blame to a degree, but you can't blame them for buying cars that are well built.
This outpouring of sentiment isn't about a car company. It's a much greater thing that bothers us subliminally, and that is the loss of British engineering supremacy. And the fact that the Chinese are now becoming the preeminent industrialised society. And that virtually everybody else in the world can do things better and cheaper than we can. That is what bothers us in our beds at night.
But every dog has its day. And as we lie awake at night, we can at least seek solace in our walnut-veneered memories.